Hey guys, it's Charlie here. Welcome back to Conquering Kerbal Space Program. This is what we're sending up to orbit today. It is another module for our station, well, several different modules, all in one big launch. We're going to be launching it up with this mainsail and, of course, the other one on the other side. And I've gone ahead and I've unlocked some things in science, and I have the KW Rocketry Titan T1, which, if you want to know the specs, you can pause the video and look at those there. So I've unlocked a couple of things. Very heavy rocketry for one, which is why I have the Titan now. And I'm actually going to put some struts on this, because in my test flights, these things come apart. And that kind of sort of negates the whole, like, parachutes on these things to save them and recover them. So there's that. So I don't know if these struts will actually do anything. I'll probably put some, like, maybe down here too, at the bottom, like that. I don't know. I can't really tell. I do one on the other side, and I'm just going to call that good probably. So what we're sending up today is a module for the station. It's going to go on the lower part of the station, and all of that stuff there is going to end up going back to Kerbin. Of course, we have our trusty Vesta VR9D to sort of get it over to the station once we're in space with a really little gas tank. We don't really need much. But this is, half of it. This is half of the payload. It's not going to stay attached to this part, but it's going to go up in the rocket because it's just this stuff is kind of weird and a little bit too long to go up in the cargo bay of the SSTO. But this is the spectrometon, and it goes with station science and with the additional hardware that goes with doing scientific stuff on a space station. I will get more in depth into that when we get up into space. And I'm not sure if those lights are going to stay there. So, yeah, I'll probably get rid of those lights too. This central node here has a whole bunch of reaction wheels on it. And the reason for this is because I'm fairly confident that this node is going to end up being near our center of mass when we get up to orbit finally and get the station fully assembled. So lots of reaction wheels near the center of mass. Then we have the convertitrons, or I guess these are just the converters for fuel, to take ore and turn it into fuel. We're going to have two of the 250s on the station, and I know what you're thinking, like, why don't I just store fuel on the station and have it converted somewhere else and put it to the station? And I probably will do that a little bit too, but I don't know. I'm going to try something different. Maybe haul the stuff to the station and have it converted then. Of course, this whole thing is going to be controlled by that tiny little probe, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, that probe is going to give us a bit of a problem on the launch pad. That probe is going to kind of change our nav ball, if you will. I'm just going to go ahead and skip ahead in the video here. Okay, so here we are on the launch pad, and you can kind of see the nav ball down there at the bottom of the screen. It's pointing towards the horizon, and that is pretty much because of that radial probe that's going to be in charge of taking this whole thing up. I'm eventually going to get rid of that whole probe, but in order to fix this, we have to control it from the docking port at the top. And that pretty much takes care of the whole thing. I will be disassembling the vast majority of this hardware once we get to the station, because we will have more material kit storage when we get all of the payloads that we're going to be bringing in this episode, or at least trying to be bringing in this episode. We're going to have more material kit storage at that point, so I'll be able to break things down. And even though it's a little bit of extra hardware that I don't really necessarily want to pay for, it is going to be useful after all. As you can see, when I decoupled those things, those gas tanks just basically disintegrate. I'm pretty sure it's because of Ferrum Aerospace Research. It's a mod that we have had installed since episode 11, and it makes the aerodynamics of Kerbal Space Program a bit more realistic to what they would be in real life, I suppose. It's the only way to make it more realistic. So I'm getting my approach to the station here, and I'm just kind of trying to keep my acceleration under control until I get a nice close approach to things. Of course, this footage is all sped up, so this does take a while, obviously. This is a post-commentary video because, well, we're going to the station. Frame rates are going to be deteriorated a bit, so going to have to take care of that. I do have some lights on this module. I did have some comments about lighting, and yeah, I understand, like, I need lights, but these are station modules. It's implied that there will be adequate lighting throughout the station without necessarily every single component of that station needing lights on it. I am trying to limit the number of parts as much as possible for the station so that I don't have to deal with a really ridiculous frame rate. As of right now, I've got something that's close to maybe like 12 to 15 frames per second. When I get near the station with a new module, I would rather that not. I would really like to keep that. I know it sounds terrible for PC gamers everywhere, 15 frames per second, I know. But this is Kerbal Space Program. We do have to deal with that. It's physics. And for those of you who are a little bit maybe new to Kerbal Space Program, the physics and the reason why frame rates deteriorate so much, if you're noticing that it's deteriorating for you when you're playing the game and you're having terrible frame rates, look at this beautiful. This is what a beautiful game. If you're noticing frame rates get bad, it's because physics has to be calculated with your processor, and the more parts you have to calculate those physics on, the harder your processor has to work, and the more threads, the more work that has to be done to do it. And since you can't have a frame rate that exceeds your processor's ability to calculate the physics for those frames, essentially your frame rate drops to keep up with your processor. In other words, your processor is the bottleneck in Kerbal Space Program, not your graphics card, usually. That being said, Unity 5.2 actually has a limited access to multi-threaded calculations. So your processor has multiple threads happening. This is getting super technical, but essentially, no matter how powerful my processor is, it's currently 4.2 gigahertz, 6 cores. This Kerbal Space Program still cannot take full advantage of all 6 of those cores and all of the threads that it offers, which for an Intel processor is 12 threads. I can't actually do that. So I'm still limited by physics a little bit. Now, I might be able to do it better than someone with, say, a dual-core processor. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not really sure how that part works. But I do know that the more parts you have, the slower the game performs. And that's pretty much it. So, like, this whole sequence here, I don't remember how long it took me. Like an hour. Probably just for this approach, and then probably another hour for the stuff that's remaining in the episode. But essentially, I'm getting to the station. I'm getting ready to sort of approach it and getting done what I need done. And I'm noticing, which is rather unfortunate, but I'm noticing that the station has no crew that I can control. If you notice their icons, all the icons on my crew are little camera icons. And I'm not able to do anything. And it's because they've all been labeled as tourists. Now, I have no idea why they're labeled as tourists. I'm assuming it has something to do with a combination of things. Probably has something to do with USIs, some USI tools, and maybe TAC life support. I don't know. I upgraded some mods. I know some people are kind of anti-upgraded on mods once you're started in a campaign, but I have well over a year's worth of life support, and the settings I have set for my life support says if the Kerbal runs out of life support, they die. For some reason, maybe some settings got reset, and all of the tourists on that craft are supposed to be astronauts that are going to help me, but since I can't control them and I can't do anything with them because they're tourists, I had kind of resorted to aborting my initial plans, which was to get my engineer off the station and break down all that stuff that's below the station so that I can mount this to it. I'm kind of forced to abort that plan temporarily because I can't control any of the Kerbals. I'd have no one up there. Basically, everything is unmanned with some tourists taking up life support resources. So that's what I have to deal with. Luckily, I've been building this station with all sorts of plans already in motion, and those plans include having a lot of spare ports, which are eventually going to have modules attached to them, but for now they don't, and so it's not a complete waste. I can still dock this thing to one of the spare ports in the station, which thankfully is this port here in the middle, so it's not going to be too extreme. But the station does have a bit of a stability problem when I get things mounted to it. It's got a bit of a problem where everything sort of just starts wobbling all over the place. Now, I think part of that is because Flight Computer is told to, say, look at target, or I have settings on there that says kill rotation, and like everything's trying to kill its rotation at the same time, and it doesn't like that. We've seen this before in a previous episode when I rendezvoused a satellite with some crew out there around the moon to get them more fuel. I believe it was our moon rescue mission where we needed to refuel the refueler. But we've seen that before where both of those crafts were basically told to kill their rotation. And since each one of them was moving in a different direction, both flight computers were fighting each other. I think that's a lot of what's happening with this. But the part I don't quite understand is that it seems to happen even though I don't use the flight computer. It seems to happen even though I don't use MechJeb. It seems like sometimes, every now and then, and yes, this is a little difficult to dock. It was originally intended to be docked a completely different way, so I wasn't quite prepared for this, but it's okay. I managed to kind of work out the approach anyways, and thankfully we're using docking port seniors, so it's a little less of a challenge to actually get attached to the vessel. So we do have it there, everything's there, but you'll notice later that we'll have a lot of rocking and stuff, and that's a little weird. And so we're back at the Space Center once again with another launch, again at night, because we want to meet the space station, and that's just sort of when it happens to be aligned properly. And this is a lot smaller craft than we had before. You probably can see it's fairly unscheduled. I didn't intend to launch this to the station, but then again, I also didn't intend for all of our astronauts to be taking a long and probably well-deserved break as tourists in space. Luckily, though, Jebediah Kerman has been in the simulator for a while, and he is on the case, out there ready to rescue his comrades from the space station. We're not the Russians, so our colleagues from the space station, our friends from the space station. So he is going to be making his way to the space station, rendezvous and dock, just like we normally do. Of course, he's been practicing this quite a while. He hasn't really been on a mission in a while. He has been, if you haven't noticed, if you frequent my YouTube channel in the comments section, he has been commenting quite a bit, Jebediah Kerman. And I'm pleased to say that while he has been distracted with videos on YouTube, unfortunately, he has also, fortunately, been practicing quite a bit. And I think I'm starting to get the hang more of the pilots, kind of getting on target. If you've played this game a while, you probably know that when you try to tell the pilot to point a certain direction, he tends to overshoot it quite a bit if he's working with the reaction wheels. And I think with the RCS thrusters, he's a little bit better. It still tends to overshoot a bit, but it's not nearly as bad. So I think a mixture between reaction wheels and RCS is probably the way to go there. But for this mission, I mostly am doing it kind of manually. I don't have any probes on the vessel, so I have no flight computer. I also don't have the MechJeb unit installed, so I have no MechJeb. So it's all kind of manual. But I do, as you can see, kind of every once in a while tell Jeb to, point a certain direction. I kind of tend to do that when I'm already pointed that way myself, though, because I will countersteer way earlier, and I will countersteer way better than he does to get myself lined up without having to go back and forth multiple times in space. So once again, our frame rate is pretty atrocious, but it's, it hasn't actually decreased since the last module. It's pretty much the same in performance. So I'm thinking that there's a point where station modules stop really affecting the frame rate all that much. I think it's sort of an exponential thing where it exponentially decreases in effect instead of exponentially increasing in effect. I know there's a better word for that. I'm not really in with words right now, but notice how the station is moving around all over the place. It's nuts. It's very violent as well, and that's time accelerated, of course. I'm speeding up this footage by about 400%, but it's still a pretty violent shake. And the only way to stop it, and you notice it kind of abruptly stopped, the only way to stop it is to turn time acceleration on. So I turn on time acceleration really quick and then turn it off. I know that's a pretty gamey system, but honestly, there's no reason for all of this to be happening in the first place. These station modules are all with senior docking ports. They were all very stationary. They were all very still. And then out of nowhere, they start doing that. So I don't know. If the game wants to do things that are a little bit unrealistic, I'll do things that are a little unrealistic. Of course, I don't think it's too unrealistic. I mean, large, heavy things in space like this probably would flow side to side a little bit, especially if Kerbals are moving around inside it. I'm wondering if I could set up some sort of a truss system or some sort of a I don't know what I'm looking to say, like struts, like the EVA struts, right? I'm wondering if it's worth it to go out on EVA and just put a bunch of struts all throughout the station to help the rigidity of it. I'm thinking that's probably a really good idea, so I probably will do that. But for now, we are just packing up all the Kerbals and our tourists. We're not able to fit all of them, unfortunately. We're only able to bring 3, so Bartman Kerman, as well as Bill. He's hiding out in the station as well, although for some reason he's not selectable in the list of Kerbals at the station, but he is definitely in one of the modules. And he's not only is he in there, but I would later find out he's actually a usable Kerbal. He's not a tourist, which makes sense because Bill is one of the original 4, which is in the orange suits. And with the USI life support mod, which is not something we're using, by the way, but I think it's sort of, because I'm using a bunch of USI tools, it sort of has a setting in there somewhere. Mod conflicts, if you will. But within USI life support, there is a setting where essentially when the Kerbals run out of life support materials, or when they run out of life support supply, they'll turn themselves into tourists. They'll just simply refuse to work. If you don't give them enough supplies, they'll just refuse to work and turn themselves into tourists, which I'm pretty sure is what just happened to all my Kerbals here. Of course, the problem is I'm not using that mod, the life support mod. I'm using TAC life support, which I have set to, hey, if you don't have oxygen and you don't have food, you die. That's how I have it set up. So I'm thinking there's some sort of a conflict there, but within that setting of USI life support, the Kerbals refuse to work, like I said, but the original 4, Jebediah, Bill, Bob, and Valentina, they're all the ones in the orange suits, if you will. They don't stop working. They consume life support resources, but they won't stop working if you don't have any to give them. Of course, that's not really how I want my system to work, so that's why we have TAC life support instead. Anyways, so this crew lands safely, we get everything good, and I'm going to time warp a little bit to the morning where we have this beautiful sunrise over the KSC. This game does not get enough credit for its graphics. I mean, I do have some mods that enhance things a lot and make things look even more beautiful, but I think the graphics in this are pretty dang good, and I don't think they get quite enough credit for it. But let's take a look at the astronaut complex, and I've decided, since I have a lot of money, and I'm pretty sure I'm okay for a while, I'd like to have more staff. I'd like to have more Kerbals. I know I've been told not to worry about buying them because you'll have plenty later and stuff, but I want them now. You see, I have station. I'm going to have some science going on. I'm going to have science going on all over the place, and I don't have the staff to accommodate that. And so I've got a bunch of people here who have really low stupidity, like Adblez, like Liz D, and then there's another one up there at Tengrid who has low stupidity as well. And so these are scientists and engineers that have low stupidity, and I don't know if it really has any effect in the base game, but with the mods I have, people with low stupidity have more efficiency. They're able to do things better. So I'm going to grab people who have low stupidity whenever I find them. If they have really low stupidity, I'm going to grab that. I don't care too much about courage. I'm not sure if that really matters, but it's there. Anyway, you can see Bill. He's right there in the assigned list. He's clearly still a passenger on the PISS initial, which has not had its name yet changed. This is post-commentary, by the way, and I have changed the name now, so don't tell me to do it anymore. I've done it now. You'll see it in future episodes. Maybe not the next one because it was recorded at the same time, but whatever. Anyway, so I have just over 3 million after hiring those 3 Kerbals, and this is the next thing we're going to be bringing up into orbit and trying to get to the station. Now, this is probably the most challenging thing I'm going to put into orbit, and by far the most challenging thing I have to dock to the station. And the reason for that is because, well, one, it's a kind of a strange center of mass sort of thing, because the white tanks, and we'll get into those in a second, the white tanks are massively heavy, and they're also really massively expensive. Look at the cost of this launch already without any rockets on it. It's almost 700,000 already. Now, each of these tanks, there's 7 tanks here, and each of them have a different type of supply, which we're going to bring to the space station. There's material kits in the top one. There's fertilizer, and that's the only one that's full because it's something that I can't really get anywhere. Then we have recyclables under that. And notice how I'm only putting 15,000 out of the capacity. It's because, one, they weigh a lot, and I don't want to have the capacity to put up that much. But I also don't want to pay for it. Then we have metals and metallic ore. Then we've got uranium, or uraninite. I think that's how it's pronounced anyway. And then the bottom tank is polymers. And we're going to be using all of these different resources for a variety of different things, but most of it has to do with building things in space, essentially. We'll also have some containers in the future that will hold chemicals and hydrogen and things like that too. This station is going to have kind of everything we need in it. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing with it, but that's the whole point. It's just to make a really cool station that's got a whole bunch of stuff in it. That's my goal. So that's what we're doing. But this whole thing weighs a lot. I mean, check out the mass on this thing. It's almost 500 tons, and it doesn't even have any rockets on it yet. So we're definitely going to need some major firepower to get this thing up into orbit, which is why I unlocked the very heavy rocketry node. This, though, is the other thing I unlocked. Check out this solar panel. It is massive. Haha. This is why I haven't put many solar panels on my station yet. I've been waiting to install this bad boy, which does 500 electric charge per second when it has 100% exposure. So it's a massive, massive solar panel, and it's gonna go on the bottom of the station. But that's the problem too, though, is like, how do I get this thing into orbit when I have such a delicate thing at the bottom? Well, I'm gonna have to configure a rocket to put it up there. And this is what I've come up with. It's a pretty big rocket. It's not exactly something you'd see in real life, but it's pretty big, and it's almost 1.5 million to launch the whole thing total. Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need a tour of this thing, but it has just enough delta V to get where it needs to go. I'm pretty confident in that. It has essentially a bunch of these space-Y boosters on these heavy lift SRBs, which are going to be with us for a very short time until they're jettisoned. Of course, then we have these giant 3.75 millimeter tanks, as well as the Mammoth engines, and we have had a bunch of those Mammoth engines all over this craft. And I'm pretty sure this is something that is going to get us up into orbit at the time. I have done a couple of test flights. Everything seems to check out with stability. I almost got away with not having these giant stabilizing fins. I almost got away with that, and that was pretty good. But I've done adequate testing, and I've done adequate flight testing and things to make sure that we're stable. So we're going to launch this thing into orbit and get it to the station, but we're going to have to move some stuff around because this part here goes in the very bottom, which means it docks to the thing that we just put out into orbit, to the station. It docks to the bottom of the module that we just brought to the station that is not currently docked where it needs to be docked. And that thing that's not docked where it currently needs to be docked also has extra parts on the bottom of it, like engines and stuff, that we need to break down. So we're going to be also bringing crew back to the station so that we can recrew the station with legit astronauts as well as engineers to break all this stuff down. Lots and lots of stuff to do next episode, guys. And that's why we're going to leave it for the next episode, because this one's already kind of long. So I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.